My Govanen. Welcome to the Tolkien Lore Channel. I'm the Tolkien Geek, and if you watched my recent video on the adventures of Tom Bombadil, then you know that I referenced a theory that I had about some of the implications of what Tom Bombadil's character mean from kind of a literary analysis point of view, and this video is going to be about that. Now, my theory, just to kind of briefly sum it up, is that Tom and Goldberry seem to kind of represent almost an unfallen man, kind of like Adam and Eve. But I don't mean this as an allegory, because of course Tolkien didn't like allegory. He thought it was, to paraphrase what he said, I don't remember the exact quote, but basically an allegory for Tolkien means an imposition of the author's idea onto the reader, whereas applicability is the reader picking up on things independently in the story. So I'm not saying that this was intended by Tolkien, and I'm not even saying that it's a perfect theory, but it does seem to me that a lot of things about Tom Bombadil and Goldberry's characters fit rather neatly with the idea of them being kind of pre-fall Adam and Eve man and woman archetypes. So first, let me kind of take a look at what I mean by the pre-fall idea, where that comes from, things that apply to kind of both of them in that way, and then I'm going to look at them both on their own to kind of give an idea of what I mean by them being kind of archetypal man and woman or Adam and Eve type characters. And by the way, for those of you who don't know anything about Tom Bombadil, not familiar with the book, but only familiar with the movies, and you haven't seen any of my previous videos on Tom Bombadil, I will link to all of those videos in the description below. And just because you're not already familiar with Bombadil doesn't mean you shouldn't watch these videos. I think if you don't ever encounter Tom Bombadil, you're really missing out on something special in Tolkien's work, so you should definitely go watch those. Before I get to my topic, though, I do need to have a shout out for my new patrons on Patreon. They are Nathan Hoffman and Bryan Swan, and you can, I'll have their names in the description below, where you can also find my Patreon page link. And if you're not interested in Patreon, I've also got a PayPal link there if you want to make a one-time contribution. Now, on to Bombadil. So to explore the pre-fall kind of aspects of Tom and Goldberry's characters, let's take a look at their general behavior. And their behavior is almost childlike, and indeed Tolkien kind of describes them as childlike in the story itself. He takes a step back and gives us an impression from the Hobbit's perspective that they seem kind of childlike, and indeed what we see them doing almost seems like they turn everything into a game. Setting the table is a dance. You know, Tom Bombadil, when they first meet him, is kind of half skipping and singing along, seemingly heedless of anything else going on around him, until they basically run up to him and shout in his face. So there's a lot of ways in which their behavior seems very childlike, not in a immature sense, but in a not overly serious and innocent type of way. They're not taking everything so seriously that it becomes a drudge. Setting the table isn't just a chore, it's a way to have fun. There's just a lot of different ways in which this kind of comes across. And then another thing too, interestingly enough, is that Frodo mentions that while the enchantment that he gets from them is certainly higher than his own, anything that he knows, it's not as high as elves. It's still kind of within his reach, as he puts it. It's marvelous yet not strange. It's not otherworldly in the way that elves are, and yet it's still different, and he can't really put his finger on it, which kind of fits if you think about it, because a human being who had never experienced what a Christian would think of as the fall would indeed be different than a normal human, but still human. And Bombadil, of course, is never really described as being human, dwarf, elf, or anything like that. It's not really clear what he is, but in fact, whenever we first see him, it says that he's too tall to be a dwarf, but not really tall enough to be one of the big people, as it's said, meaning, of course, a man, or an elf, I suppose. So he seems to have this weird in-between category that's not really anything completely familiar, and yet he's not totally different either. He's got a little bit of everything going on. He wears kind of a long beard like dwarves do, but he's taller than dwarves. He acts in ways that are definitely not dwarvish and more elvish in some ways. So he's got this weird category all to himself that seems to fit this idea that he just isn't, anything else, and yet he's not anything else either. He's familiar in all sorts of ways, and yet he never really fits into one category. Another aspect of his innocence also is brought up by Gandalf at the Council of Elrond, where one of the participants actually says, why can't we just send this thing to Tom Bombadil? Of course, Frodo at this point has already told his story, and some of the elves actually know of him by the name of Eärwain. And they ask, well, why couldn't we give it to him? He seems to have power over the ring itself. And Gandalf says, well, say rather that it has no power over him, which is interesting in and of itself, because one of the things that a lot of people tend to think of when they think of the ring, those who do like to think of things in allegorical terms in Tolkien stories, think of the ring as associated with sin, which it's not an allegory for sin, but it does have kind of that applicability in that way. And so there is a sense in which Gandalf is almost saying sin has no power over Bombadil. But more importantly, or at least in my opinion, for analyzing Bombadil's character, Gandalf says that he wouldn't understand the need. He wouldn't get it. He set bounds for himself that he's not going to cross, and that's what he would do. If the entire population of Middle-earth came and begged him to take the ring, he would do it, but then he would probably throw it away in a week because he's careless and doesn't really pay that much attention to such things, which again kind of goes to his innocent characters. Like, he knows that there are evil things out there, but he doesn't seem to heed them in a lot of ways, and maybe not to even understand them. So Bombadil and Goldberry are otherworldly and yet familiar, and they seem innocent, and all of that kind of fits in with the pre-fall idea. Now let's talk about Bombadil specifically, and I'll get to Goldberry later, in the ways in which he seems like a stereotypical male figure. So two of the things that we get about Bombadil that are explicitly kind of given as not names but descriptors are Master and Eldest. Now, Eldest in this context is kind of weird, because you get the impression that he was there before elves, before trees, the things that are said about him, the things that he's there before, are rather shocking, because they imply that he was there before practically every living thing. So it's not really clear exactly what that means in Tolkien's world, because at the same time you have Celeborn and Gandalf calling Treebeard the oldest living thing, so it's not really clear exactly what Bombadil means or Goldberry means when they call him Eldest. But it does kind of fit the idea of him being the first in a lot of ways, which would fit with Adam being the first man, the first, not sentient, but rational creature in the biblical tradition. Being the master also kind of fits with that too, because in the Bible, God tells man and woman, but man being first, to have dominion over the earth. And certainly we see Bombadil exercising a lot of dominion over the old forest where he lives, the bounds within which he has decided he's going to live. We definitely see him doing that. He can basically control Old Man Willow. He can, seemingly cause things to happen quite apart from anything else. In fact, while the hobbits are staying with him, the second day, the first full day that they're there, the day after they arrive, there's a lot of rain, and Bombadil basically says it's Goldberry's washing day. And the impression you get, it's never explicitly stated, but the impression you get is that one or the other of them caused the rain to fall so that Goldberry could wash the whatever needs to be washed. And it's a little mind-blowing to think about that, but given what else we see Tom Bombadil doing, we definitely kind of get the idea that he has a lot of dominion in control over nature itself. So there's a lot of that going on. Another aspect that really gets to kind of the masculinity of Bombadil's character kind of goes back to some of the same elements that make him seem almost childish. The way he's kind of heedless of danger, he's very adventurous. The things that he gets into are often or would be very dangerous for other people, but aren't for Tom because of his, whatever power he has. And, you can actually see a bit more of that in the Adventures of Tom Bombadil, the first poem that I discuss in that video. If you go back and look at that, or if you read it, you can see that he gets into all these situations where he's almost being a bit reckless. And by reckless, I mean that in the literal sense of he's not really thinking about what he's doing in a lot of ways. He's just getting into situations without really any forethought, but he gets out of them again because of his innate courage, power, and, he's going on adventures. Kind of random adventures and not necessarily all that meaningful in some ways, but that's kind of what boys and men do. They want to go off on adventures, and of course I know I'm stereotyping and generalizing here, but as a general rule, boys are more like that than girls. And so you see Tom Bombadil acting in a lot of ways like a boy, or, a man who isn't thinking terribly much about what society thinks of him, going off and doing all these weird things and, just exploring, having fun, and not particularly paying attention to, what he's getting into. Goldberry, on the other hand, seems to be quite the opposite of Tom, and in many ways fits the stereotypical or generalized way that we think about girls or women in our society. And one of the first ways that we encounter that is when they arrive. Tom Bombadil is kind of talking and going on and whatever, and Goldberry brings up the fact that, everything is ready for dinner, but our guests might not be. And Tom, of course, realizes, oh, I've been stupid thinking about all this other stuff and haven't paid attention to my guests. Goldberry is the one who seems to pay the most attention to making the guests, the hobbits that is, comfortable, making sure that, they're ready for the evening meal. She is very welcoming. She is almost the image of a perfect hostess. She's very domestic. She's the one who cooks and cleans. She sets the table. Oh, well, Tom helps set the table, of course. But, she's doing a lot of the things that you would typically think of a woman doing. She minds the house. She, and again, stereotyping here, but again, women are much more likely to be like that as a natural tendency than men. Men don't, in case you haven't noticed, most of you, men tend to be slobs, and Goldberry is anything but a slob. Tom is not a slob, but he is not as attentive to those kinds of details as Goldberry is, quite frankly. And then another thing we also see kind of connected with this, in that first poem from the Adventures of Tom Bombadil, the first encounter Tom has is with Goldberry. He's down by a pool or a stream, and he's kind of got his beard dangling over the river or whatever the water is, and Goldberry pulls him in and basically chides him for messing with the fish and other things in the water. Basically, there again we see her, taking thought for the things that Tom Bombadil is just kind of mindlessly irritating or aggravating. And again, what you see from that is she is more concerned with others. She is the more empathetic. She is the more, it's just a more feminine trait. It really just is. Another aspect of Goldberry's character that kind of goes along with that is not only is she a domestic homebody in a certain way, she is a domesticating force on Bombadil. Because when we meet Tom Bombadil in The Lord of the Rings, he ends up telling the hobbits, okay, come with me, and he mentions Goldberry is waiting, and he mentions the fact that he was out gathering water lilies for Goldberry. It kind of seems like Goldberry has provided a level of focus for Tom Bombadil and gotten him into a more particular way of thinking that is more centered on her, and therefore he is a little bit less wild and adventurous than he would otherwise be, because yes, he still goes out and gets involved in things, but he does them with a particular goal in mind, and that goal being, somehow serving Goldberry. And that tends to be an archetypal way we think about the relationships that men and women have. Women tend to kind of tame men and get them to be more focused on a home life, at least to the extent that men are going to be focused on a home life. Now, I mean, you could quibble with that, but it is a typical story that you see that, in a lot of love stories where the woman tames the man in some sense. That's kind of what Beauty and the Beast is all about. And in this case, we don't get a very clear view of that, but we do get hints of it. Finally, of course, one of the outstanding things about Goldberry is just the fact that she is beautiful and charming and all those sorts of things. Whereas Tom is really more of a homely type. There's nothing particularly outstanding about his appearance. Now, I raise this because Frodo and the other hobbits actually see her as being a very beautiful type, and in the same way that Frodo kind of saw her as marvelous and yet not strange, the beauty again is kind of seems more than what would be, allowed to mortals, but still not quite elven fair. I mean, he does actually liken her to an elf princess in the story, and by he I mean the narrator. But the idea is still that while she is beautiful, she is not yet so beautiful that she seems immortally beautiful the way that elves are. She's still in some ways, homely and not, completely out of this world, like amazing, because we don't get that idea with anybody really other than elves in the entire story. So there's that idea too, and that's another thing that you tend to associate with femininity. I mean, you can think of men as handsome, but almost nobody ever thinks of men as being so handsome as to be mind-blowing, whereas you do kind of get that idea with women. More women tend to have the reputation of being exceedingly good-looking as opposed to men who, it's not really the same idea. So again, we see just a little bit more of her character being archetypically feminine. So that's kind of my take on Bombadil and Goldberry as representing sort of archetypal unfallen humanity in their male and female aspects. It's not it's not like a nailed down thesis or anything, but I was thinking about it, and I think what got me thinking about it actually was probably listening to the Tolkien Professor's Lord of the Rings seminar, which you can check out on the iTunes U if you have an iPhone or whatever, or iTunes in any shape or form. You can download the audio for free, and you could probably also find that on his podcast. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think that's where the idea kind of occurred to me. So I do want to mention that just as a thing that I should point out as an inspiration for this video. And if you want to really get more really in-depth stuff, then I cannot recommend checking out the Tolkien Professor's seminar-style episodes enough. I mean, there's a seminar on the Silmarillion, there's a seminar on the Lord of the Rings. There's also an Exploring the Hobbit. Right now, I think he's working on Exploring the Lord of the Rings, which, as you can imagine, takes a long time. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. If anybody has any more comments that they think would kind of fit this vein, or if you disagree, please do comment below. I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. This is just kind of something that popped in my head, and I've been working it out. So I'm not 100% convinced that this is the best way to look at Tom Bombadil, but certainly it seems to fit better than most other ways of trying to pigeonhole him. At any rate, if you like the video, please do give it a thumbs up and share it around. Please do subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already, which you can do here. You can find some of my previous videos up here, and you can follow me on Twitter at JRRTLore. And I've also got a Patreon page now, which you can find below. I will link to that in the description. And until next time, I am the Tolkien Geek, signing out for the Tolkien Lore channel. The Bombadil.